Good evening, welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, Tom Harwood. Now, over the last few weeks, we've spoken to the Prime Minister. Yesterday, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey, and today, the leader of the Reform Party, Nigel Farage. But now, our political editor, Christopher Hope, brings you the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Kemi Badenoch, thank you for joining us on GBN Tonight. The polls suggest your party is heading for a drubbing this week. Is that your fault?
What we are seeing is a very challenging time for Conservatives. The last time we fought these seats, we were riding on a poll high during the vaccine bounce. We won 2/3 of the seats that we stood in. That's unprecedented. No party has ever done that before. So, of course, we know that there will be a correction. Last year, we also had our most historic election defeat. It's going to take time to come back from that. But I was elected to renew the Conservative Party. That doesn't happen in a matter of weeks or months. We've got a long road ahead, but the work has already started. We are rebuilding trust with the public.
What does a good result look like for you on Friday?
We are fighting for every single seat. We know that it'll be challenging in some counties, but at the end of the day, Conservative councils deliver better services for lower taxes. So I'm not playing guess the number. We don't want to talk about numbers. We want to talk about what our offer to the public is, because it's not just about winning. What are we winning for? And it's who's going to fix the roads, who's going to look after adult social care, children's social care.
Are you facing a crisis in your leadership this weekend as a result of these forecast results? And will you step aside if someone else can do a better job?
I think it's completely ludicrous to be talking about changing another leader just 6 months in. 4 years ago, Keir Starmer had a terrible local election results, and look where he is today. Local elections are not an opinion poll. They are about who's going to run the very best services. Right now, what we're seeing is that protest parties are doing well because people are unhappy with the Labour government. Unemployment is up, growth has halved, and we need to talk about where our economy is going with Labour.
In PMQs today, Keir Starmer made a joke about Robert Jenrick running. Is it time that he put up or shut up about whether he wants to replace you as leader?
No, that is not what is going on. I do think that was a very funny joke by Keir Starmer. It's nice to see that once in a while he's got a sense of humour. Most of the time he doesn't. But I appointed Rob to be Shadow Justice Secretary. He is doing a great job. He's holding two-tier Keir to his feet to the fire on justice. I want him to keep doing that.
We spoke to Reform UK leader Nigel Farage today. He told us that the Tories won't exist by the time of the next general election. What is your response to that?
He wishes. The Conservative Party is the longest existing democratic party in the history of democracy. We have a great history. We've had ups and downs, but that doesn't mean that we are out. And what I'm doing is making sure that the Conservative Party does more than just survive, that it thrives. And that is what we're working on, fighting for every single vote and rebuilding trust with the public.
At Prime Minister's Questions on Wednesday today, you called on Sir Keir Starmer to order a national public inquiry into the rape gang scandal, I think 3 times. He didn't say he would do one, did he? Why not?
I am beginning to wonder whether he's afraid of what a national inquiry will uncover. In January, he promised 5 local inquiries, not good enough, but he said we'll have 5. As of today, it's 4 months in, nothing has happened. And you can't expect local councils to investigate themselves. You can't compel witnesses, people aren't giving evidence under oath. We need a full national inquiry. Even Labour politicians like Andy Burnham and Harriet Harman have said, let's have a national inquiry. But do you know who really wants a national inquiry? The victims, and that's who I'm speaking for.
And they've told you that?
Yes, they have, many times.
Should the BBC show coverage of the Irish rap band Kneecap at the Glastonbury Festival?
No, they should not. And this band should not be playing at Glastonbury. What it needs is to be prosecuted. And you'll remember, Chris, I refused money to this band. And when Labour came in, they gave them that money. That's the difference between Labour and Conservatives. Labour won't fight for our values. They won't fight for this country. They give money to people who are anti-British, who talk down the UK, who promote Hezbollah and Hamas, and actually ask people to kill MPs. I think that's disgusting. They should be prosecuted.
How does it feel to have Tony Blair, the former Labour Prime Minister, supporting your policy broadly on net zero?
I feel very vindicated. You will know that I have been talking about net zero, not having a plan since 2019. So I'm glad that, 6 years in, Tony Blair, a former Labour leader, is beginning to see that I was right. Let's hope that other party leaders start following.
You said earlier this week that the pensions triple lock, a vital thing for so many GB News viewers and listeners, is safe as of now. Why have you raised the prospect of ending that triple lock just days before such important elections?
The Conservative policy has always been to maintain the triple lock. It's our policy, but we're not in government now. And we need to make sure that while we have all the commitments to maintain the triple lock, that we also look at what is happening to the economy. So people don't need to worry. This is other people setting hairs running, not me.
So you won't commit now to having that as a policy at the next election?
We have always said that we are committed to the triple lock. At the next election, we're going to come out with all of the policies that we've worked out. Who knows, we might change everything, make things better, improve things. We don't know where that will be until our policy commission's report.
And just finally, Kemi Badenoch, is it right that the Met police officer who was cleared of murder after shooting Chris Kaba will face a gross misconduct hearing?
No, it is not right. The courts have exonerated him, and that should be the end of the matter. Armed police officers have a very difficult job to do, and we should not act as if an armed police officer is somebody who's just working at a reception desk who decides to get a gun out. I think this is completely wrong. They do a very tough job, and they're making decisions, within nanoseconds, decisions that will save people's lives. I think it is incredibly disappointing that the IOPC has ruled this way, and Conservatives fully back our police officers. We need to make sure that they're free to do a really difficult job and are not continually hampered by this harassment that we're seeing from those people who don't want the police to be armed or to actually police this country.
Kemi Badenoch, thank you for joining us today on GBN Tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there we have it. Kemi Badenoch, the fourth in our series of leadership interviews. I, of course, want to hear your thoughts on that interview with the leader of the Conservative Party. Do get in touch. gbnews.com/your say is the way to get involved. But I'm very pleased now to be joined by the former Labour MP, Khalid Mahmood. Khalid, what do you make of what Kemi Badenoch had to say there? First, let's start on that tricky question of net zero. She feels vindicated that Tony Blair has said what he has.
Look, I think what Tony Blair said is actually interesting, and I think we should look at it. We as a nation hold a very small percentage of carbon release. What we've got to do, and our policies got to change, to look at the whole international sphere. When you've got China, when you've got India, when you've got the US, you've got some of the Eastern European states, and including Russia, still burning coal and putting it out in the atmosphere. We can't hold an umbrella over our head. What we've got to do is to have a sensible policy which allows us to produce steel, and the energy costs are just astronomical. We're going to create an industry to allow that to happen as well. And I think what we've done is we've taken a fine microscope on us as the UK and ignored everybody else outside. What we need to do is pressurize and in some instances support them financially to do this. Otherwise, just us trying to think that we can do this by holding an umbrella over our head is not going to work. And I've always said, I think we need to have a rational policy which deals with that.
Do you think the government is living up to that sort of policy at the moment?
Well, look, I think Ed Miliband is somebody I've had a huge amount of time for. I've worked with him. But I think on this policy, he needs to look at the international arena, just continuously looking at the UK, getting our people, particularly working people, those in very difficult positions, to be able to use their vehicles, to be able to get to work and back in all sorts of weathers. These people can't work from home. These people in industry and other areas have to actually go to their place of work. And some instances, very unsociable hours, so they can't use public transport. And so we're going to look at not putting more burdens on them. And so what we've got to do is relook at those policies and see how we can support them, but look at the overall international response to climate change.
OK, now an interesting point of contention we heard in that interview was that of pensions. Kemi Badenoch saying, of course, that the Conservative Party introduced the triple lock on pensions, which is true, but also saying that she's not going to commit to a fully fledged pensions policy this far out of the next general election. It was an interesting thing for her to say, because, of course, it does open the Conservative Party leader up, I suppose, to political attacks on the issue.
Well, absolutely. And I think, again, she's showing a weakness. The pensioners, we've confirmed the fact that we'll keep the triple lock. I think Labour Party will keep the triple lock. We need to keep that in order to support those people who've supported us in the past. They've paid their taxes, they've worked hard, and it's time for us to support them. And I will always support that, and I'm ensure, by the best of my ability, the party supports that as well.
Pensioners do feel very aggrieved, however, that the Labour government, one of the first things it did was to strip away the winter fuel allowance, which, of course, was not in the Labour Party manifesto. Many pensioners feel incredibly betrayed over this particular policy decision from the Chancellor.
Well, you're right in what happened, but the fact is that's a consequence of a £20 billion black hole left by the Conservatives. And I certainly hope that the Chancellor really looks at that at the earliest opportunity when the economy starts to take off a little bit, to ensure that we replace that back again. The pensions, of course, are going to be increasing by £400, which is a good thing, and we want to do that. But also, I still want the Chancellor to revisit that perhaps in the next budget.
Of course, the OBR did not seem to guarantee that £22 billion black hole figure. They said that that was somewhat of a political creation. But I do want to just get on to another point with you before we run out of time, which is, of course, the idea that the police officer who the Old Bailey found to have lawfully killed the gangster Chris Carber is now going to be put through the ringer of an employment proceedings event due to the fact that some members of ethnic minority communities feel aggrieved at the killing. Kemi Badenoch said that that's not right. What do you think on this particularly contentious issue?
Well, look, this is a very, very contentious issue. It's a very difficult issue for people to deal with. But look, we've got to get a handle on these quasi-organizations who tend to go above the law and make their own minds up. What we've got to do, once the judicial process has taken place, that's it. It's over. And I think this officer deserves a break because these people work under very, very difficult positions. Just imagine if that person in that car was able to then cause more injury or perhaps worse to other officers that were available. It's a very difficult split-second call. It's gone to the judiciary. That's been done. That's it, the end of the matter.
It is so strange when again and again, politician after politician, yourself, the leader of the opposition, many people in the House of Commons say that this is an extraordinary state of affairs, that this should not be happening, and yet this quango, not controlled by any democratically elected politicians, has been able to run away with this and 3 years after the event still put this officer's employment under question. I mean, it does seem that our elected politicians have simply lost control of processes that perhaps they used to be control of.
Well, I quite agree that I think the Labour Party has taken NHS England out. That puts direct responsibility on the ministers and the politicians who are dealing with this. I think we need to do the same here. You had the Justicing Sentence Guidelines Board, who again tried to do something without taking heed of what the government says. These people have placed themselves above the elected people who should run the country and above the law as well in some instances. They believe they can do what they want to. I think the high time for people in politics to say, we're here to take that responsibility. We need to do that, and you will listen. You can present your reports, but you listen at the end of the day what the will of Parliament and the politicians is.
Although if I had a penny for every Prime Minister who promised a bonfire of the quangos, I think I'd have at least a dozen pennies by now. Khalid Mahmood, that's all we have time for, but thanks indeed for joining us on GBN tonight.